Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Koop'd podcast. The podcast for the first time that is coming at you solo this week. Wild stuff, I know. As always, folks, my name is Koopa, and each week I sit down with you guys to talk about all the happenings pop culture. And usually it's with a friend, but however, this week, folks, I am taking things solo. So if you would be so inclined to join me and indulge me in this journey this week, we are taking things for the first time in 16 episodes of Koop'd Up. We're doing things solo today. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing either. So when I first planned this podcast, I never knew exactly what direction I was going to go with it. You know, whether if I would do guests every week or if I was going to have a permanent co-host or whatever. And I figured, if I wanted to get my feet wet, if I wanted to, really take this thing seriously and, really test my waters as a creator, I figured there would be a couple of instances where I have to go at things alone and by myself. And granted, this was a pretty slow week in regards to, new-ish things that are going on right now. There's a lot of stuff in between seasons right now. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier just finished. Invincible just finished a couple weeks ago, and we're still, about a few weeks away from when things are really going to start picking up over the summer, which is, we're getting into E3 season. If you're into gaming stuff, Loki's going to be starting up soon, and Black Widow is going to be coming into theaters, before we even know it. So, I figured now would be as good as a time as not to, kind of take a step back, relax a little bit, and talk to you guys one-on-one. We're going to get some quality time here this week with Mr. Koopa. And I decided, this might be a bit of a shorter episode. And, if it is, that's fine. But I wanted to use this opportunity to get back to the core of what this show is. And that's about, just finding things to watch. So I'll be honest, we're about 15, 16 months into the pandemic. We're still slowly but surely getting to the other end of things. I myself am fully vaccinated. A lot of people around me are, fully vaccinated. So slowly we're getting back to some sense of normalcy where, I'm getting to be able to see people again and, hang out with people. But that does not mean that there isn't a lack of television that I want to watch still and shows that I want to watch. And the problem is we're this deep into the global pandemic. I've essentially seen almost everything. I've seen a lot of what, the highly recommended stuff is, whether it be, your critically acclaimed TV shows. I've binge watched hundreds upon hundreds of reality shows while I've been in quarantine. Played all the video games that I want to play, watched a lot of the movies I wanted to watch in quarantine. And granted, I'm still going to continue to do those things, but there's something I've really wanted to do something different this week, and I turned to the viewers at home. So for this week, and this is going to be a little series that I'm going to be doing every now and then, and it's going to be called Koopa's First Impressions, or just First Impressions. So basically, as you've known, at the end of every episode, I usually ask my guests to recommend something at home for the people to be watching, and what they've been watching, what they recommend other people to watch. And, I've taken a couple of those suggestions, and I'm saving those for a rainy day. So, I know one of my friends, back in episode 3, back in episode 3, my friend Amanda recommended RuPaul's Drag Race, which, again, I've watched a few seasons of, and I will give my in-depth thoughts on that eventually. The episode I did recently with Angelife, she recommended Raya and the Last Dragon, which I am, again, going to give a first impression review on probably next month. So at least I think at least one of these podcasts a month, just to kind of save myself some pain, is going to just be dedicated to me taking the suggestions of others and finally fleshing them out and giving them proper reviews. So for at least for this specific segment, I turned to the viewers at home. So I was recommended 3 shows within the time frame I was taking suggestions. I did get a 4th suggestion to watch the show Medium, which I will be holding on for the next time I do one of these. But that came a little bit after I'd already prepped out this episode because I wanted at least 3 things to talk about. So for this episode, folks, we are going to be breaking down we're going to be breaking down 3 viewer-suggested television shows. Now, the way that this is going to work is, for at least most of these shows, I watched enough of the first few episodes to garner whether or not that I like the shows or not. And, in most cases, I usually give things like a 3-episode, sort of buffer. Because if you can figure out the gist of a show in about 3 episodes, you're probably going to be in business. Now, I didn't do that necessarily with all these things. One of these shows is a show I've actually watched. And the other one, I got the gist of the show pretty early on in the very first episode. So I think with what I've been prepared with, I can properly give you guys some insight to 3 things that I was suggested to that I really, really like. And listen, if you want to do more of these, I'll do the plugs right at the top. If you guys want to do more of this stuff, you can tweet at us at Koop'd on Twitter and email us down at koop'dpod@gmail.com and, interact with us there. And let us know if there's something that you want me to watch. If you email me something to watch, doesn't matter. I'll watch most things. I will watch at least the first episode of a thing, if you so choose to make me watch it. So, yeah, that's a fun thing, we're going to do. And we're going to get back to like a guest-ish format, next week. I do have a couple of guests lined up for the next couple of episodes. So, this isn't going to be like an every episode sort of thing. But I got to say, I'm very impressed with the fact that I was able to go 15 straight episodes with the co-host. With granted, a couple of those were repeats, but, at least every episode had a guest so far. And I'm very impressed with that. I got to say, shout outs to all my friends who have indulged me so far, to sit down and talk about, TV shows and video games and things that we really love, in a sort of time frame that fits. So, and like I said, we got some cool stuff coming on the pipeline. We're getting into the busy season for nerd stuff. So it's going to be a wild summer, very nerdy summer for sure. And I hope you guys are excited for it. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into the first edition of First Impressions with Koopa. So, to give you guys a gist here are the 3 shows we're going to be talking about today. Not necessarily in order. Today, the 3 shows we will be talking about are Alice in Borderland, Scrubs, and The Hills. I've watched at least the first episode of all of these shows. I've watched some shows I watched a little bit more to kind of get a feel of what I'm looking at. And other shows, I only really needed to watch 1 or 2 episodes to figure out what's going on. And we're going to start with what I was particularly the most surprised by, and that is Alice in Borderland. Now, this was recommended to me by Baby Beast Journey on Instagram. She suggested this show. And I got to say, what I initially thought the show was going to be, it's sort of what I thought it was going to be, and it's sort of not what I thought it was going to be. So let's just give the gist of the show. So this show, believe it or not, is actually adapted from. I did not know this initially. It's adapted from a manga. The manga came out in 2015, called Alice in Borderland, and I believe it premiered in Shonen Jump. It was part of the weekly Shonen Jump, lineup for that specific manga. It was written by Haruo Aso, and published in Shonen Jump S and Weekly Shonen Jump, or Shonen Sunday, from 2015 to 2016. And the manga ran for 6 years, featuring 18 volumes, which is really dope. I believe it spanned a couple of spin-offs. There is a 3-episode OVA, which I believe is very cool, which I believe came out in 2014, 2015. I did not necessarily look into it because I could not find it. But I did find the show was adapted to an 8-episode Netflix series in December 2020. So this actually just recently came out. And the show was directed by Shinsuke Sato. And if that name doesn't sound familiar to you, Shinsuke Sato is actually very well known in Japan for directing a lot of live action adaptations of anime to film and such. So a couple of things on his IMDb page include a Death Note live action movie, Death Note Light Up the New World, in 2016. He directed the Bleach live action movie in 2018, and he's directed obviously, and wrote the screenplay for Alice in Borderland. And he actually has believe it or not, I found this out by looking at his Wikipedia article. He has a character and scenario developer credit on Tekken 4 all the way back in 2002, which is really cool. And obviously, he directed the live action adaptation of the manga Kingdom, which is really cool. Which I believe had a 3-season. I believe they were made by the same studio that produced Yu Yu Hakusho, which is really cool. Studio Periot, if I'm remembering that correctly. So it's funny how that all kind of ties back together. And these are some big name franchises and stuff. So Alice in Borderland, like I said, came out in December 2020. So it's only less than 6 months old at this point. And I did not know that this came out. I know that Netflix loves to do these like live action adaptations of anime. And some of them, from what I understand, are like pretty good. I remember hearing that the Erased adaptation was very well received. I know there's a Kakegurui, the anime about high school students gambling is like the best, like worst way I can explain it. That got a live action adaptation on Netflix, and of course, there's the infamous Death Note live action adaptation, which, for lack of a better word, sucked. But we can talk about that another day. So Alice in Borderland again is adapted from the manga of the same name, and the series revolves around the main character Ryohei Arisu, again play on the name Alice. So Ryohei Arisu and his two friends Chota and Kabure they're kind of, for lack of a better term, directionless. Arisu is he kind of gives off like generic otaku like anime protagonist energy, where he's the series opens with him just like playing video games mindlessly while his brother goes to his corporate job. His friend Karube works in a bar, but he gets fired from his job that morning, for making out with, I think, the bar owner's, like, one of the staff at his bar, which, yikes. And Chota works an office job, but his he's skipping his job, so it's like implied that, like, I think his mom's in a cult or something where she, like, constantly needs money. So I think he's, like, avoiding going to work so he doesn't make money, which is a very odd concept, but I kind of dug it. It was really cool. So these three, they're hanging out with each other, in near Shibuya Crossing, and the three of them get so excited, because they're gonna help, Arisu's kind of down on his luck. He doesn't have a job. He's kind of he's kind of just like not really doing anything. So they're kind of just hanging out, like dancing in the middle of Shibuya Crossing. And then they cause a car accident to happen. So the three protagonists run into the bathroom of the subway station to try to avoid the cops. And what ensuing happens is that there is a blackout in the subway. Everything goes black. Their cell phones stop working. And then when they emerge, nothing is left. The entirety of Shibuya Crossing is empty. There's no people. The cars aren't moving. Everything in their general area of Tokyo is completely empty. So when they emerge, what they end up finding is there is a light. There's a billboard that lights up that gives them directions of a place or where to go. And a billboard leads them to a weird kind of shifty looking building. And inside, they find cell phones that actually work and have service, because their phones still aren't working for some reason. They don't know exactly why their phones aren't working. So they pick up the phones, and that then signs them up for a quote-unquote game, a la like horror movies like Saw. You end up signing up for a game, and spoiler alert, it might cost you your life if you fuck up. So the level of the game is demonstrated by a playing card that pops up. So soon they are joined by a high school girl whose name I believe they never get, and another woman who I believe is another main character in the show named Shibuki. So basically they end up having to play this, like I said, a Saw style game of trying to escape this building. And if you pick the wrong, you enter these doors, these rooms, and there's 2 doors. One with a devilish looking figure on it that implies death, and one with an angel looking figure on it implying life. And the point of the game is you have an allotted amount of time to open a door and pick which direction you want to go through. And if you guess wrong, you die. You get like sniped by like a sentinel creature in the sky and it like blows your brains out. Or if you take too long to answer, the room fills with fire and you die. So again, very Saw-esque where, if there's consequences to be paid if you don't know what you're doing. So eventually, now something that they teach you very early on about Arisu, and again, love the art of foreshadowing in all sorts of media. Arisu is very good at puzzle games. They show him playing. There's a lot of books about like geometry and like, the Rubik's Cube in his room. He has like a Rubik's Cube game that he plays on his phone without like, very effortlessly just solving it and going through it, which I think is awesome. And that, that eventually, might, it's presented very early on that Arisu's good at puzzles. So, I guess I should have mentioned this at the top. I'm going to be spoiling the first episode of these shows. Now, granted, I don't know how much that's going to like ruin the rest of the show for you. Cause again, I've only seen the first episode. Whether or not I go back to finish these shows is another thing. But, eventually there's a puzzle to be solved, and eventually Arisu and company end up figuring it out. So the group eventually, figure it out. So the original trio plus the other woman who's Shibuki make it to the outside, and thus they are granted visas. The thing about these visas are it extends their stay of wherever they happen to be within the game that they're playing. And once their visas run out, they are executed, as shown with another character that pops up at the end of the episode where his visa's up and he is sniped from the sky. So the episode ends with the 4 of them kind of just like looking longingly up in the sky of like what's going on, as you see a bunch more of these like sky laser things like smiting people from above. And then you see the shadowy figure of who I believe might be the big bad of this show. And I essentially got like I got like the gist of this show pretty early. It's got like isekai vibes. If you're not familiar with what the isekai genre is, it's like worlds within worlds. So think like Sword Art Online, Dot Hack Sign, where like, you are playing a character within a game, or your character is playing another character within like another sort of like device. Now, but except these people are obviously in a fantasy land, hence the term Alice in Borderland. It's very clearly a play on Alice in Wonderland. These, instead of, falling down like a rabbit hole or something, they end up running from the cops and hiding in the bathroom. So, I love the fantasy vibes of it. I love the survival aspect of it. And this show definitely surprised me. I was not expecting to like this show as much as I did. I thought what I love about these Netflix shows is that there's always like a lot of production value put behind it. And a lot of the stunts looked very believable. Nothing about the show looked cheaped out. And again, for a show that was probably produced like in like the midst of the pandemic, or maybe earlier than that, it was very, very interesting stuff. I actually haven't looked much into the development process of this film. So it looks like most of it was probably filmed in like I believe it was started to film in like 2019, and from what I understand, a lot of the show was filmed like last year. So, it's filmed in the summer of 2019 to air in December of 2020. Not that strange. So, I gotta say, I was very, very impressed with the performances here. A lot of these actors are very popular within like, obviously like Japanese media. I know the main character who plays Arisu actually played a JoJo in a live action out of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure movie, which is really cool. So there's your JoJo's reference for the folks at home who are paying attention. And I thought it was really cool. I thought this show I like the concept of it. I love the concept of, survival horror shows. I love the Saw movies unapologetically, even though, they definitely vary in their in their quality of how good they are. But I think it's really cool. And I think this first episode really gives you a good gist of what you're looking at with the show, of that, Adasu and company are going to have to keep playing these games to, survive and, figure out how to get back home. Now, granted, it's been a while since I've seen Alice in Wonderland. I don't know if it's going to follow all the same beats, if there's going to be a Cheshire Cat or a Tea Party or Johnny Depp. Not sure what's exactly gonna show up here, but I gotta say I was super duper impressed. So my review is that at least watch the first episode, see how you like it. Some shows, like I said, give it, if you don't like the show within the first 3 episodes, it's unfair to say that you might not like it, because I know there's definitely some shows that start slow and then finish really strong, but I would say the show has a really good hook from the beginning. So I would recommend watching it, at least the first episode. I'm going to go back and watch more for sure whenever that eventually drops and comes out. So this definitely gets my Koop'd up thumbs of approval, and it's only 8 episodes. Like I said, it is on Netflix, and if you have a Netflix account, so I highly recommend checking it out. So I would like to say thank you to Baby Beast Journey on Instagram for dropping the suggestion for me, as I will most definitely continue to watch this. And I gotta say, I was very pleasantly surprised by that. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about that show. I've never heard of it before, both the manga and the actual, and the actual like TV show. So, I'm very much looking forward to watching more of the show in my free time. Now, show number 2 that was suggested to me, I feel a little bad, because this is a show that I have seen in its entirety already, but I definitely was looking for an excuse to go back and start rewatching it for sure. So this show was recommended to me by my friend Esperdan on Twitter. Shout outs to him. He suggested that I watch Scrubs. Scrubs is, again, the NBC and then ABC sitcom that aired from 2001 to 2010. The fact that Scrubs has been off the air for 11 years is insane, because the show is still holds up pretty well. Now, I watch it on Hulu. I don't know if it's available anywhere else, but I'm pretty sure the only place you can find it is on Hulu. I might be wrong on that. But, yeah, so if you're not familiar with Scrubs, like I said, it is an MTV sitcom, or, excuse me, an ABC sitcom that aired from on NBC. And the series follows the lives of employees at the fictional Sacred Heart Hospital, which is a teaching hospital, because they're in medical school. It features it features the stylings of mostly from the main point of view of Zach Braff's character, John Michael, J.D. Dorian, except for that infamous 9th season, which we don't talk about. The show, Scrubs had a great 8-season run. That's all we're going to talk about. But yeah, it features a majority, a lot of it's just kind of like the trials and tribulations of working in a hospital. JD and a lot of his friends are experiencing their first, it's their first time on the job as doctors. And it features, again, a lot of favorites if you're familiar with the show. Zach Braff, obviously, a big name actor. Sarah Chalke has also continued to do great things. If you're familiar with, if you're a watcher of Rick and Morty, she's the voice of Beth. Again, great casting. Donald Faison as Turk, and he's actually going to be semi-relevant again coming soon. As I believe he was casted as the as Professor Utonium in the Powerpuff Girls reboot, which is really cool. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, the show features if you're familiar with like sitcom television, it features a lot of favorites. Now, like I said, I've cheated and I've watched the entirety of Scrubs already. I think this is it's one of my favorite sitcoms. It might be my favorite sitcom, but that's a podcast I'll save for another day. It's just such a funny show, man. In an age where granted, again, a lot of the jokes probably haven't aged well, as with most things. As with most things that tend to happen, with comedies from the early 2000s, comedy has definitely evolved since then to where a lot of these jokes definitely don't always stick as well, but for the most part, it's still pretty good stuff. So, obviously the first episode, it introduces you to all your favorites. It introduces you to Elliot, Turk, JD, Carla, Dr. Kelso, Dr. Cox, a brief appearance from the janitor, and it really just follows JD through his first day as a medical student, and a lot of this episode focuses quite greatly on like imposter syndrome. It really it really makes a guy feel a certain way. Watching both Elliot and and JD struggle with their jobs. On the first day definitely is a lot. JD's also struggling with his best friend Turk, again played by Donald Faison. They want to JD wants to live together. Turk might want to move out somewhere else, so that's causing a lot of conflict. And it's a fun show. Scrubs is a great background noise show. I like to like play it in the background whenever I'm like doing stuff. It's very, very fun. And this show, again, does a really good job just kind of peering you into the personalities of, all the other characters. Turk and Carla, get their relationship off the ground. And obviously the budding, relationship of Elliot and JD becomes the focus. You get introduced very early to how Dr. Kelso is just absolutely evil. And Dr. Cox is the best. He might be one of the best sitcom characters of all time. He's one of my favorites. For sure, the depth of that character is fantastic. But yeah, I think the show still holds up very well. If you have watched, if you're an avid sitcom watcher, like I am, I watch a lot of I watch a lot of sitcom television. It's probably my like favorite genre of television to watch outside of like anime and stuff. Because I can just like mindlessly like turn my brain off and watch a sitcom for hours on end. Like it makes great background noise. I spent so many summers as a kid just watching things like Malcolm in the Middle and like Full House and like all these like older sitcoms from like the 90s and the early 2000s. And as I've grown, I've watched some of these sitcoms, grow off into spinoffs. I've watched some of these again. I've discovered new sitcoms that I would love to talk about in further depth on another podcast, but they're just so good. There's something so comforting about just like, turning on an episode of like Scrubs or like, other shows from this era, like That 70s Show, and, just throwing something on in the background, getting some work done, and just like, relaxing and going to bed. It's like my equivalent of reading a book because I'm a terrible reader. Now, would I recommend you watch this show? 110%. I think Scrubs is great. Scrubs is an iconic sitcom. It's a lot of fun. For the most part, I can't, it's been a while since I've seen it, so I can't speak for how well everything's aged, but it holds up really, really well on this first episode. So the answer is, would I watch more of it? Probably, yeah. I've seen the show in its entirety already. So there's a strong possibility that I will go back and watch this show, again, another time. I'm definitely in a sitcom-y mood right now. That's definitely the style of show I am most in the mood to watch right now. So I've been watching a little bit of Seinfeld. I've been watching a little bit of Scrubs. Just trying to just like mindlessly keep my brain busy until like I have to start watching, superhero stuff again because Marvel has me by the throat. So like I said, you can watch the entirety of Scrubs on Hulu. Maybe someday we'll go into like a deeper dive of this show just to kind of talk about like all like the ins and outs of it. Maybe when I finish it again, but I highly recommend everybody check this show out for sure. So moving on to what this last show is going to be, and this one might take a bit. I actually watched a few episodes of this show to really understand what's going on. So, this is a show suggested to me by Caitlin. Caitlin knows who she is. So Caitlin recommended to me that I watch the infamous MTV reality show from 2006 to 2010, The Hills, as I mentioned at the top. Now, The Hills, it's a show that's always kind of like circled around my like atmosphere, whether it be, I watched a lot of like The Soup when I was in like, middle school to like early high school with Joel McHale, just to kind of get a gist of like, what was happening in like other reality shows that I probably wasn't going to watch And I remember The Hills being a very like frequented segment on that show. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of bullshit happening in this show. And I couldn't pass it the opportunity to talk about an MTV reality show because MTV reality shows just hit a little bit different. It's like, I'm a big consumer of reality TV. I love reality television. But something about like regular reality television is like your standard like fast food restaurant. It's fun, it's tasty in the moment. Too much of it'll rot your brain, and you'll probably end up like you're gonna feel pretty gross after a while after watching too much of it. I feel like MTV reality shows are like the combination fast food restaurants where you shouldn't be eating there. It's probably gonna make you sick, but for some reason you just really want to get lunch from the combination pizza, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. You can get a small cheese pizza and a Crunchwrap Supreme in the same place because why not? So I get it. I understand. I love a lot of MTV reality shows, because they're so iconic. The Jersey Shore comes to mind immediately. Jersey Shore is for better or for worse. It was groundbreaking stuff. It was a really, really fun show. At the time when it was on. And I think of shows like Silent Library, which was a lot of fun, a game show where people competed to win cash money by performing these ridiculous stunts in a library, and if they're too loud, they don't get the money. I think of all like the dating shows. MTV really put their flag in the cornerstone of like shitty dating reality television. Even in the mid late 2000s, early 2010s, you had shows like Next, which was iconic. Shows like Parental Control, which lives rent free in my brain at all times because of how scripted and bad it is. But I can't stop watching it because again, that combination Pizza Hut Taco Bell is calling me, and I can't get enough of it. There's and that even extends into MTV's like later TV life with shows like Are You the One, which again, it's very problematic, and quite frankly, that's not one of my favorite shows. I think I find it very problematic. There's a new show called, I think it's called X on the Beach, which takes, reality show stars and puts them in a house together, and then at various points of the show, they bring back those people's exes, which then makes an already complicated dating show a very much more complicated because some of these people can be civil with their exes. Some of these people can be, mean to their exes. So it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. But the MTV reality show is like its own sort of beast, and I absolutely adore it. So The Hills has always been something on my radar. I've heard of it through passing for years. As a kid of the late 90s, a lot of these shows were very popular amongst my demographic for a long time. And listen, the entirety of it is on Paramount Plus now. So Paramount Plus, shout outs to you. You are probably one of my favorite streaming services without realizing it. If you're into like, anything under the Viacom umbrella, which includes Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, so any shows like that, where else can you find SpongeBob SquarePants, ridiculousness, and Cranky Anchors in the same streaming service? You cannot. It's impossible. And listen, their lineup of shows is getting way better, man. Like I believe there's an iCarly reboot launching next month actually on the platform, which is kind of buck. I did not know that was gonna happen, but I'm a big proponent of Paramount Plus if you're into like shows like that, and obviously like CBS shows like Survivor, Big Brother, NCIS, Hawaii Five-0, like all these, cop shows and reality television shows, and the news, I guess, if you're into that. But enough about that. I'm merely just stalling because The Hills has me so conflicted. So The Hills itself, I did not notice at the time, is actually a spinoff. It is a spinoff of Laguna Beach, The Real Orange County, which aired from 2004 to 2006 and followed the lives of, students attending Laguna Beach High School. So it was one of those like angsty, like teenage, drama things and whatnot. So this show is where you get introduced to the main character of of the hills, which is Lauren Conrad. Lauren Conrad at the time is a freshman at like the Fashion Institute. At some fashion institute in Los Angeles. I already forget the name because it's come and gone from my brain already. She's trying to pursue a career in the fashion industry, so she moves to Los Angeles with her friend Heidi Montag, however you pronounce it. Obviously these two are iconic. They're friends together. They a bunch of their other friends make appearances, and other characters from Laguna Beach do at some point make an appearance in the show as well. So, it follows the life of Lauren Conrad and those around her personal circle as she, tries to navigate school and relationships and an internship at Teen Vogue while also going to fashion school and stuff. So it's a lot. This show feels it feels like scripted reality. I don't know how scripted or reality the show actually is, but it is truly ridiculous. So I watched the first 3 episodes of the show because I needed to know what I was getting myself into, because some of the stuff it feels very like it felt very soap opera-y. It felt like a lot of these storylines were very forced. It was a lot of stuff that like it wouldn't make normal people mad and stuff. Like it's like in the first episode alone, like Heidi, I believe, like enrolls into fashion school and then like drops out of fashion school to work for like a I think it's an event like planning place or whatever. And I've watched like sparing episodes in like later seasons where like she still maintains that job, so I guess dropping out of school was not like a bad choice. And granted, if school is a choice for most people, but like she literally showed up for one day and she's like, yeah, I can't do this. Like, let's give it like a week, like a month, give it a semester, give it a couple of months before you decide not to go back to school. Like, you can't determine how your school experience is going to be on the first day, Heidi. Like, what are we doing here? So, the first 3 episodes of the show do a great job, setting up, what Lauren's about, what Heidi's about, what their friends are about. And I got it. It's so like it hits all the MTV reality show beats. It's young people who are attractive, who are very, very dumb. There's this one girl in the show, her name's Audrina. Like, she's like a receptionist at this like at this one company that does like film shoots and stuff, and like she's like answering phone calls like on the job, like about like there's these dudes that show up to like visit her at work, and I'm just like, who does this? Like, people in real, like, men you're interested in real life don't just show up to your place of employment and be like, hey, can I get a tour of the place? Like, no, I'm working. That's so weird. They make a big stink about like what Lauren wears to work on her first day, which is like spaghetti straps and like jeans and stuff. And like she's working at Teen Vogue. Some of these people don't look like they're dressing Teen Vogue. Like, granted, this show is very 2006. So like, I can't really speak for how like, how fashion has evolved since then. We've definitely come a long way since Justin Timberlake frosted tips and like baggy, like cut up jeans. But granted, I've been wearing graphic t-shirts and cargo shorts for a majority of my life. So like, I am not one to cast shade on fashion. So I do feel like a lot of like the plot stuff is like very like contrived. Like, there's a lot of drama in places where it shouldn't be, but it hits the biggest MTV note of these reality shows, which is it's truly one of like the saddest things about watching these shows, 10, 15 years later. The copious amounts of misogyny in these shows is absolutely insane. Like, going back to watch something like this now, like, considering how like, we've evolved as a society, for the most part since then, like, there is just so much, like, so many sexist like comments being thrown around about like, hey, like, I'm only trying to hang out with this girl to like, be in relations with her and like do all this stuff. And like, there's a couple of like words that are dropped where I'm just like, oh boy, like, ugh. It was definitely a different time back then. So that's, again, the hardest part about going back and watching some of this old content is that it is, it's a whole lot of yikes. But the show in itself again is iconic. The show it lasted the test of times. It's getting a reboot, which blows my mind. If you talk to anybody within my age group, you mentioned Heidi and Spencer, they get it. Heidi and her boyfriend, soon to be husband, Spencer Pratt. They are one of the worst reality television show couples of all time, for obvious reasons if you're familiar with the show. And listen, the show's getting a reboot. It had a spinoff with one of the other characters in it, which I found, very interesting. But when I go back and watch more of this, I don't think I'm gonna have much of a choice because my partner has been watching this as like her busy show. So I'm probably gonna be consuming a lot more The Hills and Laguna Beach content than I would personally like. But I can't say it's all bad. And I know that Heidi and Spencer have appeared in like reality television shows that I frequented, like Marriage Boot Camp and like Celebrity Big Brother, which is really cool. So it's definitely a choice of these shows, and it's a nice little time capsule of like the mid 2000s MTV, where like a lot of angsty like teen dramas mixed in with like Robin Big, mixed in with God, what else was on at the time? Like I said, like Next, Parental Control, like all these shows. It's been such a pleasant trip down memory lane with all of these shows in the MTV category. I watched like a few episodes of Cribs the other day. I would love to talk in more depth of Cribs one day, and I think I'll make the conscious choice to do that because it's a really it's a really funny show, man. Something about these MTV reality shows just hit a little bit different, and it was really, really good. So, like I said, you can watch the entirety of The Hills on Paramount Plus. It is available. It's I have to call it like it is, man. Lauren Conrad is iconic. Heidi's iconic. Spencer and Heidi are iconic. There's unfortunately the misogyny is very for the times and iconic. I would potentially watch more of this just to see dumb attractive people be dumb. It's like one of my favorite things. That's why I watch bad dating reality television. It's just hot people being hot and stupid. Like it's like really makes my brain feel good. So those are the 3 shows that I decided to consume myself to this week. Now, again, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode this week. Again, I'm going to do one of these maybe like once a month. Maybe I'll even make it a bonus podcast, if you guys are into that sort of thing. If you want to suggest to me shows, and then I'll give you, some in-depth reviews of the first couple of episodes and then some. But again, it's a little bit of a shorter episode this week just because, time was a little bit busy. Again, I just had my birthday, a couple of weeks ago. So I've been very, my birthday was just last week. So I've been very busy getting stuff together, but we're going to get back to regular Koop'd Up content happening next week, which is going to be cool. Got a couple of special guests lined up. And listen, if you guys like the show, which I hope that you do, you can you can check me out again on Twitter at twitter.com/KoopaNJ, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/KoopaNJ. And I gotta say, we're available. The podcast again, it's at Koop'd Up Pod. We're available on all your listening platforms. So check us out on Spotify. Check us out on Anchor. I don't talk nearly enough about like where you can find us. And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please leave a like and a review. It helps us, get better exposure out in the app world, because I really want the podcast to succeed, and it's been great so far thanks to you guys. I really gotta applaud everyone who's listened in and chimed in. It really does mean the world to me. So stay tuned for more Koop'd Up content. Stay tuned for more Koopa content in general. I will be commentating some more esports events coming up soon if you're into that sort of thing. And we'll be seeing you guys next week for more Koop'd Up content. So until then, folks, have yourselves a wonderful weekend and stay safe.